delighted to say I'm joined by Patricia Davies and Christian Lamb, who both served with the Wrens during the Second World War and both remember D-Day very vividly. Thank you both for coming in. It's nice to have you with us. And it's a day when people are naturally sharing lots of memories. People are paying tribute. And I'm just wondering, Patricia, what is your perspective today, 75 years after D-Day? What are you thinking of? What crosses your mind on a day like today?
Well, I think it's that one has very vivid memories. You know, we watched the landing craft and the bits of Mulberry Harbour go past under the cliff at now Dover.
At Dover, yes.
I was at a listening station there.
Right.
And then, of course, the day came. And I think we were all up at 4 o'clock in the morning looking out at sea. There was still convoys going past. But
were you aware of the scale of what was happening and what was being attempted? I mean, was that clear to you or not?
I think it was clear to us because you know, they had Operational Fortitude and the whole Kent area. We had phony tanks and Churchill came down and all sorts of things happening. We're very aware, I think, that it was going to happen.
Right.
And very, very relieved when it actually did.
I'm absolutely sure. Christian, what are your thoughts on the day? Well, where were you on the day itself?
I was on the south coast near Falmouth.
Right.
And I remember having been through the plans and so on, that it was terribly, terribly exciting to hear about 6 in the morning on the radio that we were landing at last. All those hundreds and hundreds of men lined up on the south coast, never knowing, because the weather was so unpredictable. So exciting, thrilling.
To what extent were you aware of the much bigger picture? I mean, you obviously had access to certain amounts of information, but I always wonder to what extent people had the full picture. How aware were you at the time of what was going on?
Well, the sort of awareness I had really was that we were going over to France to give France back to the French.
Right.
And that I thought was something so valuable.
Yeah.
And other countries, but especially France, was our neighbour really. And it was a marvellous thought.
It's a marvellous thought, certainly. Just in terms of monitoring what was going on as it happened, as the invasion happened, and then it made progress, what effect did that have when you learned that it was working and that the Germans were now under increasing pressure in France?
Well, it mattered very much to particularly those of us who had a fiancé or a husband over there, which I didn't, but there were a tremendous number of those.
Yeah.
And, it was the great relief that at last we were going to liberate the continent. You know, I'd been on top of my cliff at Dover looking across at a completely cut off coast of France. And, you know, I think it was a great sense of relief. It started, it's happening.
75 years on, Christine, which is 3/4 of a century later. Are your memories still vivid of that time? Did you remember the actual events day to day? How vivid is it?
Well, it's very vivid when I think about it and what I was supposed to be doing and what I did to the plans and so on, and I wondered whether they'd used my plans that I'd made, that sort of thing. But it was mostly thinking of the hundreds of people who were going to be relieved when we got there, and also the wonderful way in which we had managed to persuade the Germans that we were going to land in Pas-de-Calais instead of the Normandy coast. Yeah. And so many things had been done to confuse them and make them believe it was magic to think it had worked.
So the deception was very advanced and was very intricate.
Yes.
When you talk about your plans, give us an example of a kind of plan that you'd have drawn up.
Well, I was given the positions which we were going to land in, and so each ship had the sort of landing in front of them, and my plan was to have to produce a picture of every for the what you have this you need a not a compass. You need
Yes.
a compass, and on every bearing I had drawn a picture of what they would get. So every bearing was visible, and this was to make the country more visible and more recognisable and identifiable, so that when people were actually going to invade, those people were able to see. I mean, it was my little office had huge, big maps of very advanced sort of technique and ordnance survey, sort of, amazing. It was very exciting.
It's very exciting, but more importantly, I think it was clearly vital.
Yes.
So the work was vital, and we thank you both for coming in. It's very nice to see you both. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. It's clouding over a little, but maybe it'll clear up again. But I hope you enjoy the event.
Thank you
Thank
very
you both
much.
very much. Nice to see you both. Thank you very much. Well, the story of D-Day, as we know, is a story of people coming together